Ranked number 1 in Africa and 23rd out of 180 countries in the world, Namibia's press freedom has set the standard. Now, hello and welcome. I'm Janet Asis, and welcome to this special elections coverage proudly sponsored by Fernmart in Keetmanshoop. Now, today we'll be talking about the media, the role of the media and election coverage. Namibia has retained its top spot of press freedom ranking in Africa for the second year in the row. The World Press Freedom Report 2020 has revealed this. Now, has the Namibian media lived up to the expectations of her people? Well, joining me to unpack these questions, I have Ellen Nanuses Alberts. She's a chief reporter from the NBC, as well as Suzette Shitaura. She is from Nampa, and also Macrally Walter from Claras FM. Now, before we get into the discussion, NBC reporter Salma Henok has scooped a joint award from the Merck Foundation, which recognizes the media in educating and sensitizing the public on COVID-19. Let's hear what she has to say.
Hi everyone, my name is Salma Henok, and I'm a reporter at the Namibian Broadcasting Corporation. I'm here because I won an award for the Merck Foundation Media Recognition Award. It's an international award that really meant a lot to me because it came with advantages of being recognized, not just locally, but also internationally. And also it gave me a platform to network with a lot of media personalities across Africa. We got the award because we were able to send in stories that were sensitizing the community on the pandemic, COVID-19, and it's because of that we're able to be recognized and winning this award. And I won the award with a journalist from South Africa. We got the first prize in the multimedia category in Southern Africa. The awards were recognizing people from Southern Africa and also people from East Africa, people from West Africa, and it's a network of journalists. And winning that award really gave me a boost in my young journalism career. I can now say that I am an award-winning journalist, and it's just something that really pushes me to really do more in terms of informing and also just giving factual and timely information at the same time. Looking at journalism in Namibia, I could say that we have found our feet with the newly established Union for Journalists. We are able to really just now report information without fear of being judged or without fear of not getting accurate information out there because you are afraid of what will happen to you. But we have that freedom of really just giving out information and informing the public with timely and educative information at the same time. And as journalists out there, I think it's just a matter of really doing it with passion, making sure that you go an extra mile. That's what gets your work out there, and people will start to see your work. Getting an award just comes with advantage of being recognized, but at the end of the day, you get the satisfaction of knowing that the information that you are getting out there, people are seeing the work that you are doing, and it pushes you to do more. So thank you.
Well, congratulations there to Salma Henok. Now we are discussing the role of the media and election coverage here in the Claras region. Now, a very good afternoon to you all here, my panelists here. Now, before we actually get into the discussion, talk to us about your mandates of your respective media houses. I'll start with you, Macrally.
Yes, I represent Claras community radio station in Keetmanshoop. Because we are a community radio station, we are there to serve the community. We are there to tell the stories of those that cannot voice themselves and also to inform and to educate.
Ellen?
I'm Ellen Nanuses from the NBC. Our mandate over the years has been to inform, to educate, and to also entertain the public of Namibia. I think it's a very important role that we have been representing over the years, because in terms of the work that we do, the reasons why we do it is to help people to be able to make decisions for themselves by having correct information about matters that concern them.
Suzette, share with us. Suzette.
I'm Suzette Shitaura from Namibian Press Agency. Just any other media house, our mandate is also to inform and educate the public. But yet again, we are there also to source local, regional, and international news, and also to exchange such news to other agencies, be it nationally or internationally.
Now, Ellen, let's talk about the role of the media. Has this changed over the years? I mean, we could talk about, this term is quite broad, but let's look 5 years, let's look 10 years. Has it changed much?
Janet, it's a very good question, because when you look at the role of the media, the first thing that you realize is that we deal with information, that we are responsible to be able to disperse information in a very timely manner, that we ensure that it is accurate information, that it is also balanced information. And in that manner, we are assisting people making decisions. I think that role should not change, actually. I think that it should be a role that just gets embedded more and more. And it hasn't changed that much. I think what has changed over the years is the methodology that we use to do what we do. In terms of what has happened with technology, we started as the press, which was mostly newspapers. We evolved into radio and television. Then we got onto the internet. And now we have what we call social media. So we are on all of those platforms, be it YouTube, be it Facebook, be it WhatsApp. All of them are being utilized. And I think that the role players that have come onto the scene have also increased, meaning that big corporations are not just owning the media, but that any person that has access to technology can actually be part of the news stream. So I think in that sense, the technology, the methodology that we use has changed, but the role itself hasn't really changed that much. And I don't think that it should change.
McRae, you have the same sentiments?
Yes, I won't take anything away from that. I will just add that, now we as the media are in a position, to take on that role much more stronger, because there's a lot of stuff like fake news coming out. So it's up to us to make sure that accurate information is out there on time using the available platforms like social media, like she also gave an example thereof.
All right, Suzette?
I will also agree with my two colleagues. Yes, we do have a mandate, as we have said, to inform the community. And most importantly, we should also emphasize more on the accuracy of the information we give out to the community and how factual it is. With my brother saying that there is a lot of fake news that is arising. So us as the media, before we take this to our consumers, which are the public out there, we have to establish if it's true, if it's right, from the right sources or newsmakers. Yes.
Right. Now, if we look at the statistics, Namibia is still taking the top spot in press freedom. It's the second year in the row in Africa, and this is now coming from the World Press Freedom Report for 2020. What's your take really on that? Is that really the feeling on the ground as journalists? McRae, let me start with you.
Because I'm still new in the journalism industry, and I'm also on the ground levels, which means I'm from a community radio station. I would say that it's fair. It's a fair statement in terms of I haven't seen any journalist having been or their lives threatened so far. I haven't seen any journalist get into a big trouble. So I would say it's fair. Yeah, that's my sentiment.
Ellen?
Janet, my sentiments concerning press freedom and holding the ranking in Africa has to do more with the environment in which we operate. I believe that the environment that we are operating in is predominantly a peaceful environment. Also, it is a very accommodating environment if you look at the cultures as well as the traditions of Namibian people. It's people that are really open to the media. It's not really an environment that is harsh, that we operate within. And just the hospitality of the Namibian people makes it easier for us as journalists to be able to do our work. People are open to speak to journalists. as much as they are comfortable speaking about a certain topic, they are open to speak to journalists. And I think also the fact that media freedom is part of our constitution, that we do have freedom of expression and that it's enshrined in it, that we do have a community that is also aware that they have a voice, and where they don't have a voice, the media is able to present that voice for them. So in that sense, I think also looking at the fact that we're not operating in an environment where there's so much war. We are also not operating in a climate where the politics are so tense that you have rivalries, that you have, we don't have military states. So all of that contributes to the fact that you can say, yes, we do operate in an environment that contributes to what we can say. Yes, we can be the first in our ranking when it comes to media freedom.
Susie?
Yeah, I also want to add what she said about the freedom of speech. Everyone has a freedom of speech in terms of our constitution. And that also, when it comes to media, I can come as a journalist, I can stand up and go to a certain government institute, and I'm granted entrance to that, and I can ask any question pertaining to whatever I want to know about whatever is happening. And most of the time, they are free to give us those information. And again, in Namibia, we don't get things like you get jailed because of doing a story or doing what or doing that. So, yeah, freedom, yeah.
Definitely. Now, we've asked the public their views on the role of the media, and this is what some of them had to say. Let's take a look.
Important. They play a major role in the community because not everyone is fortunate enough to have smartphones. Like some of us only has televisions, and others only have radios, and they are sharing information on all the platforms, and everyone is getting the information.
From the media, we are getting information, and we are learning from media, and we are education. Our education is from the media.
Media, it is very, very important. Give us information from outside of the country, and give also those people that are out of the country for information what's happening in our country.
Well, there you have it, just the views there of the public really on the role of the media. Now, with me in the studio is a fellow journalist just discussing the role of the media, and what really comes out in the discussion there is information, it's education, really what we've really been discussing in terms of what the role of the media is. But let's talk about the safety of journalists. We had the MISA Namibia, the former MISA Namibia National Director, Natasha Tibinyane. She once said the safety Namibian journalists enjoyed is waning, and those committed to democracy, media freedom, access to information, and freedom of expression needs to join our call for safety of journalism. What's your take on that? Ellen, let me start with you.
Janet, I think it's a very important statement that Natasha is making. I believe that let's first look at what could be the repercussions when the safety of journalists are threatened. I believe that it would lead us to work in an environment where you censor yourself more than you would necessarily do. I also believe that it would introduce a biasness into journalists if you think your life is under threat, if you take a certain tendency towards your work. Then I also think that the adverse side of us operating in a threatened environment would also lead to us not being truthful most of the time in our work. And I think to be able to protect our fairness, to be able to protect that we can be unbiased, to be able to protect the fact that we can tell the truth without fear. We can tell truth to power. We can hold the electorate as well as the elected accountable. We can hold ourselves accountable. I think that it is necessary that we continue to protect the environment which we currently operate in, because it's not necessarily that the environment is under threat. I think it's more that we maintain the environment in which we operate. And I think that speaks also to the rules that we have for ourselves as media. We have codes of ethics. We have regulations that regulate our industry. Just as much as we speak about media freedom and freedom of expression, I believe that we also need to keep our end of the bargain and behave ourselves as the media. And by doing that, we will be able to preserve the safety of journalists in the country.
Right, Suzette, what's your
Yeah,
opinion on that?
I agree with Ellen when she says that we also have a mandate. We have also things that govern us. We have things that govern us. As a media person, you're just supposed to come to this point and stop there. So if we keep that bargain of or the other end of the bargain, I think we will continue to operate in this safe environment. And also she said that if we operate in a safe environment, it means that the flow of information is free. I am able to say no, because I am operating in this free environment. I can do such a story, and I can go to that extent without being threatened, without seeing my life that I'm in danger or whatsoever. Yeah.
McLary, I like what Ellen says, truth without fear, and also not being biased. Talk to us more about that.
She also mentioned that the maintenance of this environment, is of utmost importance, because that allows us as journalists, to give accurate information out there. Because imagine we are going into a world whereby you as a journalist remains threatened every time. You would give out information that this corporation wants you to give. You would give out information that the government wants you to tell the people. Because, at the end of the day, those people out there reading your article or listening to you on the radio, they make decisions based on what you tell them. So that would be affected in a huge way. And the maintenance is key. Maintenance of this environment is key. And I think we, as the whole nation, should be in support of this.
Now, just tying into the discussion, would you say that Namibian journalists are facing challenges despite us working in an environment that is peaceful? Would you say that Namibian journalists are challenged?
Yeah, I can't speak for the corporate journalist, but from the community side, we face a lot of challenges, right? In terms of cash flow. You are restricted to such a manner that you can't reach to stories because of a lack of funds, things like that, and lack of training. Those are the kind of things that we at the ground level face. Lack of exposure. I assume in a corporate world it would be a form of oppression, perhaps from your editor. You can't talk about the story, or you can't put out the story, things like that. So yeah, that's my take on that.
Yeah, I'm glad that you spoke to the issues of resources. Because one of the things, when you look at media indicators, you look at the environment that media operates in. You also look at the resources that are available to them. You look at the technology that's available to them. You look at the training that's available to them. You also look at the political landscape that they operate within. And I think in terms of threats, one of the things that I mostly always get concerned about is self-editing as media houses, which could also be translated as self-censorship as media houses. I think that there is an unconscious level of knowing what to say and what not to say. And I think in terms of that, I would view that as a threat. But I believe that if media also had the resources that they need to be able to do the work that they are required to do, that there would be a difference in terms of what they are able to produce. Secondly, I think there's a need for us also on the side of the media to understand the type of environments that we operate in. That if we would understand the cultures and the norms of the environment that we operate in, that would decrease the threats to us. But for me, the threats mostly are internal in the organizations where we work. Unless you are the type of journalist that perhaps has offended an organization or a person through your reporting. And even in that instance, I've not really met a journalist besides myself that had to appear in court and was detained for going to an office of a company that was building the Nekadal Dam because they were having workers from I think Brazil or that didn't have work permits. And we were informed that immigrations will go and look at the situation, and we went there.
Now,
And-
Ellen, let's move the discussion into the elections and media
Yes.
coverage into elections. As we're now waiting for the votes and the counting is underway. Talk to us about media ethics and the freedom of journalists to cover the elections. I'll start with you, Suzette.
Yes, thank you very much. As a media person, when you're covering the election, you have a role to play, a very important role to play, which is to inform your community out there. Someone, maybe somewhere in Oshakati, will want to know what is happening in Keetmanshoop on the ground. And you have that role to play, that you offer factual, accurate information to that person. Mm-hmm. And it's very important because even during the election process, you will be called all over. No, there is a certain thing that is happening there. The machine is not working, or the ballot papers are not having some faces on or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I, as a journalist, have that role to say, no, let me call somebody else from the ECN. There is A and B and Z happening at that polling station. Are you aware of it? And maybe this person was not aware of that. But most people, they say that when I, as a journalist, go out and say something bad about maybe ECN, the ballot papers are not there, I want them to be seen as being bad, but that's not the case. Sometimes they're not aware of the situation. I just want them to be aware of that certain situation so they can attend to it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right, now Ellen and McLary, I think just briefly, if you can, I'd like to ask about how journalists can hold political parties and the candidates accountable. I'll start with you, Ellen, just briefly.
Janet, before we get to that question, mm-hmm. I just want to speak to what makes elections coverage different mm-hmm. than what we do on a daily basis. And I think it speaks to the elements of us living in democratic countries, and that the role of the media when it comes to elections gets more heightened because we need to be able to contribute to a free and fair election. Mm-hmm. Meaning that when we are covering elections, we are deciding, a nation is deciding on a leadership that is going to set the tone and the agenda of where that nation is going to move towards. Mm-hmm. And we have a responsibility to showcase or to show who the candidates are. What type of leadership are we looking into, and what they say they are going to present. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's something that we shouldn't neglect. And with that also comes a different responsibility of being the fourth estate. We can never neglect that. The way that we hold them accountable is to remind them of their promises. Fact-checking becomes a very important part in this area. Mm-hmm. The promises that they have made, have we tracked the progress on what they have made? And do we know the background to what they are talking about? Because we must always also be on the lookout for lies from political parties. Mm-hmm. It's very important that we tell the people, well, this is what the political party is telling you, this is what you are telling yourself, but this is the situation on the ground. So we become the third voice, mm-hmm. helping the people to know what is actually the truth.
Mm-hmm. McLaren?
I would just add on that by saying that holding politicians accountable starts before the election itself. It starts with the campaigning. Mm-hmm. You are there to explain to the masses out there what that person is saying, to interpret it in the language that they understand. Mm-hmm. Once they understand that the election comes, they know what they are voting for. Now it's time for you to do your backup, to make sure that this person actually, is delivering what they promised or not. It's your job to give that information so that the person that went out and voted know where their vote went.
Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, I think the biggest change in the media landscape is fake news, technology, social media. Let's talk about fake news. How common is this in Namibia? Let's start with you.
Fake news has become a trend in Namibia. Politicians are using it daily. Parties are using it daily. And I don't want to mention any other names, but it has become such a trend that every second or third post that you see is photoshopped from somewhere saying NBC News said what, or saying the Namibian has said, or the president has said. It's very important for us as journalists, to follow up on these, because these catch fire very quickly. And it's our job, remember that our mandate is to inform and educate. So it's our job to then go back and do research and give accurate information to the people, because, like I said previously, the people out there make decisions based on what you tell them. So it's important that you give accurate information to the masses.
Okay.
One of the things also in terms, Janet, repeat your question.
Fake news, social media.
Yes, thank you. You know, I have a mind that runs all over the place. As much as we're dealing with the internet and with the boom of social media, we'll be dealing with fake news. There are organizations that sits behind breaking and sharing fake news, people that are paid to do this. People that are paid to do this for political gain as much as for commercial gain. Mm-hmm. And I think that the more we are aware of it, the more we will protect ourselves against it. I remember there was a list that was circulating with names of people who received money through bribery. A lot of us had to double check that list and realize that this is fake news. And I think it's just important that we realize not everything that we receive on our phones is true. Remember, we have WhatsApp on our phones. We get information on our phones. Mm-hmm. We have Facebook. We get a lot of information through that. Most of the time, that's where we are. But then I still trust radio and I still trust television because they have held on to the traditional rules of how to do news and how to do programming based on verification of facts. We always still verify. We do not just go out and run with a story. And I think that is where I give kudos to traditional media and public media, that they have entrenched that one key element of verification. Mm-hmm.
You've raised also another point, Ellen, about fact-checking. How are we as a country getting towards fact-checking and really looking at the credibility of the news? I mean, the challenge we also find from the public and even as journalists, I believe, is even the timeliness of all this information that's pushed out. You get a WhatsApp message or whatever the case may be that comes out, and now you from Nampa or whoever has to now come in and really show that this is fake or this is not real. Or just talk to us really about that.
It is very challenging and difficult when you work at a news agency because once you receive that text message from somewhere, something happened, but it's fake news, even though you have to still check it out. First, as a news agency, you want to be the first. So that's another challenge on its own. But then it comes also that this information should be factual. It should be the truth. It should be accurate. So you go back to your sources, whoever is being accused in whatsoever fake information that you have gathered, and then you inform the nation on what it is really. But for a news agency, it becomes very difficult because you always want to be the first.
Mm-hmm. Maybe, Ellen, just also to touch on the fake news, is what should the public really be looking at, especially when that type of news comes, whether it's in social media or on WhatsApp. You find some of these reports will say a reliable source from Nampa says, or reliable source, and that already just, for some that are not, that may not understand, would already believe that information. What should the public really think about or consider when some kind of news pops up in their social media space?
I think just an awareness of knowing that not everything we receive is the truth. Especially, let's speak directly to the place where we are when we are reporting elections. I'll give you an example. Say a president or a president-elect comes and he says, the economy has gone down in the last 3 years. We as the media need to know, is that true or not? We need to know if he says job creation has gone down by 500 jobs, and I'm going to come in and I'm going to create 200,000 jobs in the next 3 months. Is that even possible? So one of the things I want to speak to is how prepared we are as journalists. We can't go into an election without knowing the history of what's been happening in our country, be it the economy, be it job creation, be it the development projects that have been in our country, how much money has been spent over the years on projects. These are the type of information that we need to come armed with. Mm-hmm. We can't come empty-handed, so that we are just believing or we are taking it as the gospel truth, whatever politicians are saying. And another thing that we do, we need to be able to take pictures, show the country without it being a political rally or without it being a news story through our other platforms that we have as news agencies. Continuously inform your people about about development programs, what's happening in informal settlements, what are the people saying, are they satisfied with what has been happening? And just looking at the mandates of regional councils, the mandates of local authorities, the mandates of what national governments are supposed to do. And I believe as long as we keep abreast and keep our nation abreast with what's happening, people will know if somebody lies to them, and they'll say, I heard it on NBC. NBC told me it was on the radio, or I received it from Karas FM. People talk, and by always feeding them the information, we will help them to know when they are being lied to.
Now, Meg, I'd like to just shift the conversation a little bit in terms of objectivity of the media, and especially covering the elections. I mean, you're all human. You also have political parties that you support. How do you keep that journalistic hat when you are reporting on a political party that that you're not supporting? How do you remain objective as a journalist?
Yeah, we're all human, like you said. And every story starts by being subjective. You always have a certain take when you take on a certain story. But then you need to remember that that information is not for you or the group of people that you represent. So you need to make sure that, even though you have certain beliefs, it's not always about your beliefs. You are supposed to give neutral information out there. So it's just simple, stick to the ground rules, be objective, don't choose sides.
Ellen?
Janet, I think objectivity also comes through in the nuances that we put into the stories that we tell. But I think when we realize that we are playing a very important role when it comes to being able to inform people to make those decisions that they need to make, it creates a certain sense within you that you need to be fair with what you are saying, because you're telling it to people that they can make up their mind. Also, it tells you need to be accurate in what you are saying to the people. It also tells you that you need to have integrity when you are doing your job, because you care about your country when you are doing your job. And I think once you keep that attitude, as much as you can have a preference for which political party or which candidate, I think as much as you have that sense, you can withdraw yourself and still do your work.
Now, Suzette, I feel like I haven't given you enough space to give your say. Please share with us.
Yeah, I like what he said about you don't have to be in the story. You get your two sources either way, or one source that you're doing the story from, but it is for the community out there. It's not yours. Your opinion is not supposed to be in the story. So I think when it comes to objectivity, you must make sure that yourself is out of the story. Your opinions are not in the story, because whatever we report on is not for us, and it's not coming from us. It's coming from a newsmaker to the community out there. Yes.
Right. Now, our news team interviewed a New Era journalist who spoke a little bit about the role of media. Let's take a look.
The environment, happenings like the elections, inform them who won which constituencies, who is leading the results. That's the informative part. The other one is the education part. As journalists or media practitioners, we can inform people, but are we sure that they understand what we are telling them? So we really need to ensure that they can understand and comprehend on what we are giving them, what information. The other one is also the platform. We must create a platform where people can be free to air their views, and where other people can also contribute to either differ or agree with other people's views. Then the other one is most of the time media are also used for publicity or PR function. So media should be there also to promote issues in the community and activities. So then the other very important one is that of advisory, meaning that media should be a watchdog. Media should not let, although government is in control, do things they want. Media should also stand up and inform the community where government is not doing good, or where anybody is in any way hurt or something negative is saying about that person. And that is basically the role which I understand for the media. Okay, in terms of challenges, personally for me as a New Era reporter is resources. Luckily we have NBC, who is very cooperative. We even have an agreement with NBC whereby I'm provided with accommodation. I'm provided with data or Wi-Fi. I'm provided with not transport, but I can use any time of NBC transport when going out to events. The other one is, the other challenge is sometimes it's difficult to get access needed because of bureaucratic system. So how I overcome it, and normally I won't be upset if I cannot get through to a person to get a view or something, but there's always ways and means to get information. And one of the biggest challenges for media practitioners is to exercise objectivity. Sometimes you are more close to a certain issue or to a person, and then you are more likely to take sides of that person. So it's very important that journalists or media practitioners should at all times exercise objectivity. And then another challenge is not all the times we verify information we receive. We blindly publish things or inform people about things without verifying the truth about it.
Well, that's the views there of New Era journalists, really about the role of the media, and that's really the premise of our discussion this afternoon. And I'm joined here by fellow journalists from Nampa NBC as well as the Karas Radio. Now, let's just shift the conversation for a moment and speak about the Access to Information Bill. The Access to Information Bill. I'll start with you, McRally, about the Access to Information Bill. How critical is this bill?
I feel that this bill is of utmost importance, in terms of information that the media needs, that the normal citizen needs. A lot of issues that we are facing now as a country can be solved in such or in a faster manner because information is available. This bill, I feel that this bill is very important. We've been struggling as a nation to get access to information for a long time. I'm not sure if this bill has been in place. I know that it was proposed this year in Parliament. I'm not sure how far it went, but this would do the country very good in terms of issues like corruption that we are facing now, the fish rods and stuff. Information like that would have been out a long time ago. And those are things that we are struggling with, even as the media.
Janet, I think the Access to Information Bill needs to be passed in Parliament. It can't be delayed any longer. The reason why this bill was drafted in the first place is to be able to give access to information to the public. And the classification of information that you have in governments or conglomerates makes it difficult to access some documents. So in South Africa, you have the Public Access to Information Act, which is the PIA Act, that if you want a company or a conglomerate to open their books, you can apply the act to your application for them to open their books. And there will be a ruling made that they need to open the books if it's really information that the public needs to know. So you can apply that act in the application and they will open it. So it's the same principle on which the Namibian Access to Information Bill operates. One of the reasons why we have whistleblowers in companies or in governments like Edward Snowden is because you realize that there are things happening in government, the dark side of governments and conglomerates. You realize there are things happening in government like the illegal surveillance that was taking place in America. And Edward couldn't do anything else but to blow the whistle and say, hey, your phones are being tapped. Your mails are being tapped. You are under surveillance, whether you know it or not. But the information that the government sends you is that sensitive information is not being shared and you are not being tapped, while in fact, they were being tapped. And it was information that they needed to know. And on that basis, Edward blew the whistle. So when you have this failure in terms of not having legislation that allows you to access information in a credible manner, you get whistleblowers.
Susan?
I think to me personally, the bill will be so much helpful because sometimes you do a story as a journalist and you need a certain information. But then if you have to go to that institution to go and ask for this certain information, then it's delayed. At the end of the day, you lose interest and then you say, okay, fine. Because anyway, you have to balance your story. Remember, we have to balance our story. So if an allegation comes from the community side, then I need a certain individual from an institution or whatsoever to bring their side of the story. But in most instances, even if you go to that institution, because of there's no law or governance that they are supposed to give us this information, sometimes you sit down with your story and at the end of the day you don't do the story, which can be a big story that can change people's life. So I think it will help us in that terms that I think it also has that 21 days to give information to the media. And if you don't do it, then there are other things that can be, actions that can be taken against these people. So yeah, it will help us.
Right, now we are getting closer to the end of our discussion, but I think this question is quite pertinent for us to really understand is journalism as a career, especially now that we have social media and the digital media that's also come into play. Would you say that the journalism career is dying now, that we've got other, public journalists out there? Want to share the news, Meg?
I wouldn't say that journalism is dying. I would just say that we have new journalists every day on social media. People become, what do you call them, is it trendsetters or
influencers?
Influencers, yes. And with that power, they start doing podcasts or videos covering certain aspects within the country. And they have a big following. And people start following, or not following, but believing what they put out there. But it's still up to us, because we are still, as media outlets, people still come back to verify with us. So I don't think that journalism is dying, but the threat of social media, is putting a lot of strain on accurate accurate news. Yeah, so that's a big threat that social media is bringing towards journalism.
Right, Philip?
I think, Janet, when we look at that question, we also want to look into the type of environment where we are operating. Yes, the entry of social media and having third parties also participating in the journalism industry, it does make it seem that true journalism or older generation journalism is irrelevant. But when you are operating in a country such as Namibia, that is still 60% of its population living in rural areas, there was an insert from a young lady just earlier that was saying, not all of us have smartphones. Most of us are still relying on the radio and television. So when the public tells you that, it tells me that journalism is not dying. It is still a relevant industry. And I want to speak to particularly also investigative journalism. Should never die, because it's through the stories that we investigate and that really have an impact on the public that we help people to live.
Suzette, I have to take you there very briefly, if you can, in 20 seconds.
Yes, she actually just took my word. The investigative. Social media will be there, but social media doesn't really concentrate on investigativeness. So as the traditional journalism will still be there, because we concentrate more on digging and getting accurate and factual information, yes.
All right, well, thank you so much for joining us. Unfortunately, we've come to the end of this program, but thank you so much for joining us and sharing with this discussion. Thank you. Well, there you have it, that the discussion really was centering around the role of the media and also covering elections as we get closer and closer to the election results. Well, from myself, Janet Aces, and the rest of the crew, it's bye-bye, Namibia.